Estamos hoje aqui no 19º Congresso de Ufologia, primeiro Fórum Mundial do Rio Grande do Sul, com Mr. Gary King, que é um especialista sobre crop circles, ou seja, agroglifos. Então vamos fazer uma entrevista e saber um pouco mais como começou a jornada do Mr. King nesta área tão entusiasmante. Okay, thank you for giving us some time. And I would like to know, and we would like to know a little bit how you started your experience on studying crop circles.
Sure. It goes back 20 years now. I was just 30 years of age. I was a lawyer. I was married, 3 children, mortgage, all the bills, all the stress, all that stuff to do with life. And I got burnt out. I was working too hard, too long hours. And I needed to take some time out. So I had stopped working, and during the time that I was not working, I began to explore things to take away my stress. Tai Chi, yoga, meditation, these sorts of things.
You were always fond of these?
I wasn't, no. It was just because I knew I was stressed and I needed to do something so I was exploring the alternative.
Okay.
Because the doctors, they just want to give you tablets, and I didn't like the tablets. I tried the tablets, and after a week I felt worse. So I thought, I'm not taking the tablets, I need to do something else. So Tai Chi, yoga, meditation, reading books. Mm-hmm. And during that time, I met a man from America who was over here with a student of his. And she'd written a book about spirituality, and they were in England, and they were going around doing presentations about this book. And I met them, and I went and did a sweat lodge, a Native American sweat lodge ceremony with them. And then 2 days later, I did some shamanic kind of dancing for hours and hours and hours and hours. And it was a really strange experience. But a couple of days later, I can't describe it. It would take me all day to describe the experience, but I had a very peculiar experience. And so I looked for this man to try and explain what had happened. I needed to know what happened to me. He was away at that time, so I had to wait a couple of weeks. And when he came back, I went and saw him and explained my situation and said, this very bizarre thing happened. And he listened, and he didn't really say very much. He just said I needed to ground myself from the experience. Gave me a few exercises to do. I was a little disappointed, really. I thought he was going to give me this big explanation, but he didn't. And then about 2 weeks later, he called me and said that he was going to see the crop circles. And I'd seen the crop circles on the news maybe 10 years before, but I didn't really know anything about them. So I, of course, said, yeah, I want to come with you, because I wanted to ask him lots of questions. He took me to the crop circles, and there had been a crop circle that night, the night before.
Oh, really?
And so
what a coincidence.
When we got there was a fresh crop circle, and it was spectacular. It was amazing. It was like nothing I've ever seen before.
Do you remember the year?
1997, yes.
1997.
Yes. Okay. And so we went inside, and I was walking around and looking at it and trying to figure out what this was. And he asked me to sit down, and he laid me down, and he closed my eyes. He said, close your eyes and just, empty your mind. And I kind of went into a dream really quickly and saw all of this wheat, the crop, lay over like this, all in one go. As if like, those boxes that you fold up?
Yes.
It was like that.
Oh, really? And
I woke up, and it was seconds, it felt, I don't know. And I looked at him, and he looked in my eyes, and he had a glint in his eyes, and it's like he knew what I was experiencing. And I said to him, all the crop goes down in one go. And he laughed. And I was intrigued. And that was it, really. I never left then. I needed to know more. And so I wanted to get books, and I wanted to find out more about groups that were studying them. And he warned me not to. He said that there was a lot of political infighting with the groups, crop circle study groups, and that the politics would overtake my studies. And for various reasons, he said, you best do your studies on your own. Now, because I've been doing Tai Chi, and I had a history of martial arts in my life.
Oh, really?
Since I was 5, and I hadn't done it for the 10 years that I was working hard. I hadn't trained, so I was very unfit, and I wasn't healthy. And he said, the thing for you to do if you're going to stay with the crop circles is to practice your martial arts, the Tai Chi, and study that alongside the crop circles, and don't involve yourself with any of these groups. So for 10 years I did that. And for 10 years he came over from America every year, and we would go to the crop circles together, and we would have bizarre experiences. And then after 10 years, in 2007, on the 7th of July 2007, I decided to do a night watch, to watch over a field where crop circles regularly appear. So I went there with my girlfriend, and we met with a cameraman who was filming the field. He was hoping to catch UFOs. And we sat there in the dark, and about 3 o'clock in the morning there was an incredible white flash of light.
Oh, did you see them then?
We just saw the flash of light, and we talked about what it was, because it felt very strange, the light. But we were having a really good conversation at the time, and so we talked about it for a minute, and then we sort of dismissed it and carried on our conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And then about 20 minutes later, which would have been about 3:20 in the morning, still dark, the cameraman said, let me look through the night vision camera. So he pulled the night vision camera open, and it was still dark, completely dark in the field, but through the night vision we could see a crop circle that was 300 meters long by 160 meters wide. It was over 150 circles in front of us. It wasn't it. 4 milliseconds it took. That was the length of the flash. The cameras picked the flash up. And so we walked in, and he filmed us. You'll see the footage in my presentation tomorrow.
Excellent.
We walked in. It's huge. This thing was huge. Huge. And
this huge crop circle appeared in seconds.
Well, we believe it did. We couldn't see it appear because it was dark.
And it was after the lights?
It was after the light.
Okay.
Flash of light, and then
the crop
was there. And it wasn't there. So in 300 minutes of darkness, 150 circles appeared. So if anybody would have made those circles in the dark in front of us,
yeah, it's impossible.
It's one every 2 minutes.
It's impossible.
It's impossible.
And there are still people that think...
They think I made it. They accuse me of making it. They say I made it, or I'm lying. But everybody knows that there wasn't a crop circle there the day before. Everybody. They accept that.
Where? Was this in England?
You remember in 1990, the Led Zeppelin, the band?
Yes.
Same field.
Oh, okay.
Famous field for crop circles. That's why we went there. And because the date was 777,
okay.
we thought, okay.
What a coincidence.
Right. Lots of coincidences have happened in the last 10 years. So then everybody knew who I was. And because the newspapers and the television wanted to interview me, and everybody. So they say, well, how long have you been looking at crop circles? I said, 10 years. Who knows you? Only 2 researchers that had written books knew of me. And I'd been friends with them, but I wasn't publicly known as a researcher at that time. I kept my teacher's word, and I stayed quiet on my own. After this, everybody knew me, and then I began to start getting invited to conferences, and they said, well, what do you think about it? And I talked about my work with martial arts, and I believe that the crop circles are all about transformation, to transform us, as they did for me, from a sick man, someone who I was a lawyer, I had very low morals, I had no ethics, it was just about making money. And so I needed to change. The reason I was sick was because my moral compass and my ethical compass was off. And while I thought I was doing what the world demands of you, to provide for my family and hustle, and it was the wrong way to have a fulfilling life. And so the crop circles then, as I began to explore the crop circles for the 10 years before that, I realised that the more I looked into the crop circles, the deeper I was carving my own soul.
Isn't that fantastic?
And so the 20 years have gone on now, and I've had 20 years experience of this, and I've seen many people who've come to the crop circles and had transformative experiences, that I'm absolutely convinced that whatever it is that's creating the crop circles wants to help humanity, wants to help us, but they can't do it for us. We have free will.
We have to
do it ourselves. They can help us.
They're showing the way.
They're showing the way.
Yeah,
the symbols themselves, they relate to philosophical symbols that Pythagoras and Plato and the geometers, philosophers of the 5 centuries before Christ were all exploring about the universe and man's role in the universe and so on. The crop circles are all about these things. The geometry and everything that's contained in them. The most prolific symbol inside the crop circles is something called squaring the circle. Mm-hmm. If you can make a square the same perimeter or area as a circle, it's said that the square is the symbol for Earth because we invented squares. Okay? And squares are practical on Earth. We have square rooms, we have square windows, we have square bricks. If you try and have round windows, it's very complicated. It doesn't work very well on Earth.
I understand.
But Earth works in a circle. Nature works in a circle. So we have to reconcile the earthly square with the heavenly circle, which is a symbol for transforming yourself, rising yourself up from Earth to heaven, toward God. And so this has been my experience.
Gary, I would like to know how many crop circles have you studied? Do you know?
Well, studied is different from how many I've visited.
Okay.
I've visited probably 1,000 crop circles in 20 years.
1,000 already?
Yeah.
And you have this documented with you, the pictures?
No, they're not. It's not a scientific. If you show me the pictures, I can tell you the story around everyone. What happened that day, who I met.
Oh, you have all these records in your mind?
Yeah, because it's a big event. It's like you don't go to miracles very often. Even though I've been to a lot of miracles, you remember. And so I'm not studying them from that kind of documented scientific, I've been more interested in studying people's reactions to them. So for many years I was a tour guide. People would come from all over the world and they booked me to take them to crop circles.
Really? This is interesting to know.
I still get it. This year, the chairman of Santander Bank is coming for me to take him out for the third time. 2 years ago, the chairman of the Bank of Mexico and his wife flew over in their private jet and they asked me to take them.
So do they ask you explanations about crop circles?
Yeah, we talk about the geometry, we talk about the symbols, we talk about not just the crop circles, the land itself. Mm-hmm. Where the crop circles appear, where they started appearing, is where farming began in England. Mm-hmm. So there is a context. And also we have Stonehenge and Avebury and many, many megalithic monuments. So there is a whole history of man changing from being hunters and gatherers to farmers, which is a massive transition for human beings. Before that, we never exploited the land or anything. But when we settled and we started to grow crops, square off the land and grow crops, then we built these stone circles like Stonehenge and so on. There is a whole history of man starting in this location. So it's context as well as the symbols. So these people would come and I would judge their reaction, I would watch them. So I see people come to, so crop circles can give you emotional reactions. Some people go inside and cry. Some people laugh. Some people get very chatty.
So it really changes
people inside.
Inside.
And you don't just watch what happens to them when they go in a crop circle, you pay attention to what happens before, during and after. Because there can be coincidences. You might be trying to find a crop circle and you can't find it. For example, we drive up a road. Someone has told us there's a crop circle in a field on the left, or the right or the left of the field. So we drive down the road. Can't see it. We drive back. We can't see it. We drive back, third time, and then there's people standing in the crop circle in the field and we all like, why didn't we see it? Things like this happen all the time.
You mean Real people?
Yeah, real people. And then they turn out to be friends of ours. And we say, how long have you been in here? And they say, we've been in here an hour. And we say, but we drove past and we didn't see you.
Wow.
So things like this. So you have to pay attention to strange things that happen before you go, and during and after. And I watch for people's reactions when they go in and when they come out. And then I watch how they hold it. Because what I've learned is that people have powerful experiences that they can't explain, and then a week later they've either forgotten it or they've dismissed it, or told themselves some story that I must have been imagining this, or I must have been this. And so it's been really funny to watch how people have powerful experiences but let them go because it doesn't fit in with, So I've been more interested in that, how people react to them.
Okay. Gary, I've never been inside a crop circle, although I'm very fond of this matter. I would like to know a little bit about the way the plants bend, and do they always appear on wheat fields?
There's predominantly, there's predominantly 4 crops, predominantly. There are others. So at the beginning of the season, in April, we have the yellow flowered crop, which is for canola oil. So far we've had 5 this year in that crop. 5 crop circles already.
So many.
Yeah, we had one 2 days ago, the day I left, May the 4th, left the UK to come here to Brazil. This didn't happen before since 2009 that we had so many.
It seems that the phenomenon is happening very often. It's been more often than...
Well, the last few years actually it's been down. It's been lower. We've been having 40, 45 crop circles a year, whereas 97 we were having 80, 100. There was 160 one year.
That many?
Yeah. We have sometimes 5 or 6 in one night. People
Are
don't
they
know
close
this.
to each other?
Yeah. And it can take you 2 days to go and visit them.
So we are having messages from somewhere.
Somewhere, regularly. Like 6 or 7 sometimes a night. So, for example, regularly during my time, I will wake up in the morning and I'll find out there's been 2 crop circles in the night, okay? So I'll go and visit them. Check them out, measure them, do whatever. The next day I wake up, there's another 3. The next day there's another 2. Then there might not be one for a couple of days, and there'll be 4 in one night. This happens all the time and people don't pay attention to the fact. They just think it's one every now and again. It's not.
Well, that's what I thought.
It's not.
It was every once in a while. I didn't know they were so...
If you go on to, there's 2 main websites, Crop Circle Connector and Temporary Temples. Temporary Temples is the one I would recommend.
Okay.
Steve and Karen Alexander have been photographing the crop circles since 1995. You look at the dates and you will see that it's not just on one day. It's 4 or 5 on one day and 3 on the next.
So it's pretty common.
So in answer to your question about the crop, do you have canola? Then you have barley, which is a very fine, wispy crop. It's like wheat, but it's softer.
Okay.
Then you have wheat, July, August. Then maize, corn. There's also some crop that's linseed, flaxseed. It's like a purple flower, so delicate. We've had crop circles in those.
Really?
Yeah. So it's not just one crop.
And do they all go to the same direction when they fold?
No. Now, when they first started to appear in the late 1970s, we just had simple circles. And so people were explaining them, saying it was wind. It was like a dust devil. Yeah? And that's why they were saying, that's why the lay of the crop is always going clockwise, because we're in the northern hemisphere. Okay? But as soon as somebody said that, a week later, we had one with a counterclockwise lay, as if to say, no. So that went on for a few years, and now, we have it's weaved together like baskets, or we have sculpted trees out of the crop in the middle. I'll show you video tomorrow in the presentation.
When this happens, is that the ones that give us the impression that it's the 3D kind of?
No, it's not done for that. It's just simply done. It's almost like walking into a room like this and having a bunch of flowers ready to welcome you.
Oh.
It's just beautiful. It's just beautiful.
I can imagine.
And so the lay of the crop is one of the major factors for me, because having been to so many crop circles, I have been fortunate enough to get into crop circles and be the first in them.
Do you live close?
I
to
live
this
very
area?
close.
Okay,
So
it's
and I know farmers, and I know people who fly microlight. And so if I get a call and say there's a new one, I'm there as quickly as possible with my cameras and so on to film it. And often during my 20 years, I've got to crop circles and I've been the first. Particularly, I know I was the first in the one that appeared in front of us. There was nobody else.
Well, yeah, of course.
And
We were there at the moment that it was yeah.
And there is no damage to the crop. It's almost like something's just gone and blown it over in a swirl.
Very soft.
Very soft, very beautiful. As you walk in, you're having to lift your feet very high to get through it. It's not damaged, there's no crushing, there's no breaking. It's impossible.
And Gary, let me ask you a question. AJ Geber this year made a discovery.
Mm-hmm.
He discovered that inside the crop circles, it happens a kind of phenomena like as if the plants were sterilized.
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever sensed or knew or did something about this matter of
No.
testing the plants?
It's very well. There've been lots and lots of tests that have been done on the plants,
okay.
but not the test that AJ did. And so AJ has inspired us to want to do some of these tests in the UK, and hopefully we'll try and do that this year with Jaime Maussan. We've both discussed getting this done. But there have been lots of tests that have been done. The crop circle that appeared in front of us, I'll be presenting tomorrow, the 12-page scientific report that was done on the crop. And the scientists said that the plants were hit with two entirely different energies at the same time.
Is that so?
Because when we walked into the crop circle, every step we made was like static electricity. Crack, 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 crack.
Really?
And so we described this to the scientist, and then when he analysed the crop, he said, this is why. He said, the plants were hit with plasma, which made the electrons strip from the orbit of the proton in the atom, and when we touched them, it will jump back just like static. So that he called it an electron or an ion avalanche that made all the electrons strip from the plants.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But Nancy Talbot has done soil samples and there've been plant samples. W.C. Levengood he began to take the seed heads that were found inside crop circles and germinate them to see if they grew. Mm-hmm. Mostly they never grew because whatever it is that hits the plant dehydrates them.
Okay.
This is why we get sometimes if you take a strand of wheat and you put it in a microwave oven and you press, then the node will expand because the water inside the crop will heat up and it will make the plant, and then eventually little holes will appear in the node to let the steam out.
And is this what happens?
This is what happens.
Okay.
So if you take the seeds from that and you try to plant them, they're dehydrated, so they won't grow. But what he found was that if whatever it is, the energy that impacts the plant happens about 2 to 3 weeks before they're due to be harvested, then the seeds give 5 to 10 times more yield. More yield. So, what he did was he began applying electrical impulses in the laboratory to seeds, because he theorized that there's 3 energies: electricity, microwave and magnetism that are happening to make the crop lay over. So he began to apply electrical impulses to the seeds and germinating them. And he found that if he timed it right, at the right time, with the right frequency, that he could replicate and get more yield. So he patented the process. Now the patent office will not let you patent something unless it works.
Okay.
And so he learned how to get more yield from wheat from crop circles.
Gary, one more question, the last one. What do you think is the message that we are receiving from them?
Okay, I get asked this obviously a lot. A message is like a text message. It says, I'll be home late, or leave my dinner in the oven. It's a short thing. But the crop circles are now 7,000 crop circles worldwide. And they began in 1979 and they're still happening. So this is a communication, which is different from a message.
Oh, absolutely.
Now, some of the crop circles, individual crop circles, can say are self-contained messages. For example, the alien with the disc.
Yes.
Okay. Beware the bearers of false gifts and their broken promises. There is much pain, but still time. Believe there is good out there. We oppose deception. This was the message in the disc.
Face of the alien.
The face of the alien holding the disc.
I know that.
Remember?
Okay, yeah.
The message, when it was decoded from binary into English,
It was a binary language, right?
said, beware the bearers of false gifts. We oppose deception. Okay. In 1991, there was a crop circle that was in a very strange writing. It's the only, I did a whole lecture on this last year about the only crop circle that we've ever had that used an alphabet. Because an alphabet, these are symbols that represent sounds that come from our mouth, okay? So when we learn to read as a species, we use our eyes to hear our own voices in our head when we look at the page. You understand?
Yes.
This is not natural. Ears are for hearing, eyes are for seeing. But when we learn the technology of writing, we changed our senses so that we now hear our own voices. So the crop circles have never been in an alphabet except once. And so we hired a linguist, Professor Gerald Hawkins. We got 18 scholars who spent, I think it was like 44,000 hours trying to find what this language was written in. And they found it was written in a very obscure post-Augustan Latin. And it said, we oppose deception. Okay? So there have been messages, and the messages are pretty consistent in saying that they oppose deception. Now, most people think that that means other people telling them lies, the government, about UFOs or so on. Mm-hmm. But I believe it also refers to the deceptions we tell ourselves. That they need us to understand that we tell ourselves lies. And we believe these things. And that unless we are honest with ourselves, individually and then collectively, we're doomed. The road to us being saved is to stop lying to ourselves first.
I agree with you.
So the message in some of them seems to be directed at this subject of deception, whether it's from outside to us or from inside of us. The campaign, the communication is still ongoing, so we don't know the end of the communication. But the common theme has been about squaring the circle, as I mentioned earlier, which is about transformation. It's about rising yourself up from base level toward heaven, directing your attention. So you have to look at your morals, you have to look at your ethics, you have to become a better person, you have to transform yourself. So I believe the communication, I like to call it, and the title of my lecture tomorrow is called Cards on the Table. That expression in England means to be honest.
Okay.
Yeah? So if I have a problem, I'm not having a good time in my life, and I go to my mother says, let me put your cards on the table. You did this and you did this, and that happened because you did it to yourself. And I have to go, oh, it hurts, but it's right. And the only way I can make decisions about changing the future is if I know where I am now, cards on the table. And so I believe the crop circles, by being in the land where we started to farm, when humanity built these stone circles like Stonehenge and Avebury and all these monuments, I don't believe they did it with some ruler cracking a whip. I believe they did it because they all worked together, altruistically. And we need that now on the planet more than ever to get out of the trouble we're in. And so I believe that that they're trying to help us, but they can't do it for us. And that the communication is directed towards transforming, making a transformation of yourself, and thereby my teacher always used to say, if you look after your own doorstep and everybody else looks after their own doorstep, the world will take care of itself. And I think that's what the message is.
Okay. Thank you so much for giving us some of your time and letting us know so much about you also. Thank you very much.
Thank you.